Welcome everyone to the first podcast by Freyt World. Our first guest for our first podcast is Sam Farrimond, the CEO of Redkik Asia. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you. Hi, good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Now, just before we dive into you, Sam, and what everything that you do and Freyt Insure, etc., I'm just gonna give everyone a bit of a brief introduction to what we're trying to do with these podcasts and the goal of these podcasts. So I think, you see a lot of people these days opening up podcasts, doing podcasts. There's a lot of trial and error. Some work, so some don't work. So we are going to take the deep dive in and see if we can make it work. And the idea behind this is that we've got this media powerhouse, Freyt Media, behind the Freyt companies. And, after our conference last year in Phuket, something that we sat down as a team and discussed was how we can leverage the media side of things, but more to bring our members more of a benefit to the network. And if you look at the industry now, there's so many networks out there. The market is almost saturated, so it's how to really differentiate yourselves. And we do feel that the media side of things is really going to take us to another level and really differentiate us from the networks that are there at the moment. So with the podcast, the idea is to bring on our vendors, to bring on our members. So for today, we've obviously got you, Sam, and we're going to be talking about Freyt Insure and talk about where we've come in that. The next week, we've got a few of our members talking. So it won't only just be me on the podcast, it'll also be the members. And essentially what we want to do is create a channel where our members get to share their voice on the markets, where they're going, and essentially help everyone that's in the industry. So that's where we're going. So Sam, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're really happy. Obviously, we met each other in what was it, about June, July last year. I stumbled upon a post on LinkedIn. I think Redkik had partnered with not a network, but actually a software at the time. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because with the previous network I used to work with, we also had an insurance program, but the market has changed so much where things are now digital, and that's where Redkik comes in. So this really, really intrigued me. Sent a message to Chris, your CEO, the owner of Redkik in the US, and he put us in touch. And you flew to Bangkok, and we met at Radisson, and things just really, really picked up from there. So I think, Sam, before we start talking about Freyt Insure, let's talk about you and Redkik and give us a bit about your story and Redkik's story.
Yeah, great. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity. It's good to have the chat. So yeah, my story, I've been in the insurance space now for probably, I would say more than 25 years, probably close to 30 actually. And I've been quite lucky. I've sort of consulted and worked in almost every aspect of the industry. But one of those that I actually hadn't done much in, fun enough, was cargo. And when I first met the Redkik team, I was really quite interested with what they're doing, specifically in the cargo space. And it was an interesting dialogue that I'd had with them, in that I'd spent a lot of time in data analytics, in one-time pricing, straight-through processing, etc., and which has happened all over the whole space of insurance. But I was fascinated when I first met the Redkik guys that they were telling us that, well, this just simply hasn't yet happened in cargo. And that's what picked up my ears. And that's where I could see the opportunity, actually. And it was very interesting. So then I sort of learned more. I actually met Chris, funny enough, in Hong Kong at an investor event. And he told me the story as to why he created Redkik.
And
he actually used to, he used to run a small but very sort of boutique, high-end trucking fleet. And he used to move a lot of the pharmaceuticals up and down the highways in the States. And he was becoming forever frustrated with the difficulty in purchasing specific insurance contracts for specific journeys, really because of the nature of the goods that he was moving. And it's a little bit like the Remington's ad story, sort of, he got so frustrated with it. He actually decided, you know what, I'm going to build something. I'm going to build this product so that so we can actually sell this thing ourselves. And after about 9 months or so,
it's an incredibly bold move, as you said,
it is
going from a trucking fleet to owning a trucking fleet to the insurance tech space, which is, you know, not really been done before, and to pull it off, it's an incredible
It
story.
is actually, yeah. I mean, it is really an incredible story, and it was I when I first came in, I actually didn't believe him when he told me how backward the industry was. But when I started walking around and talking to people, it really was paper, it was faxes, it was telephones, and I was blown away. And I could see
Well, it
immediately
still is,
there's
right?
an opportunity here. Oh yeah, absolutely, there's an opportunity here. So yeah, that's the story of how we sort of got going. And then the reason we sort of they've done very well in the States, and we're picking up some really good traction now. And I could see the curve, and they're saying, look, Sam, we need to get going in Asia. And obviously I've been in Asia for 20 plus years, and spend a little bit of time sort of looking at freight. But it was after my first sort of few interactions with people I knew in the freight space, I could see immediately what the opportunity was. Even I could only see a glimpse of it, but I could think, no, there's something here. So, and that's really where the relationship began. So we set ourselves up end of 23 in Asia. 24 was really the building the relationships with insurers. That has been probably one of our biggest struggles, just getting the insurers online,
Yes.
understanding what we're trying to do, understanding how we want to change that business model. And then finally, it was reaching out to the freight forwarders to explain, to explain what the opportunity was and to show what success we're having elsewhere. And they've jumped on it, which has been great, actually. It's really nice when you
Yes.
come to market and somebody says, actually, we really need this, and
Yeah.
we can do something with it. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
and I
been a
think
very interesting journey.
I think our timing has been perfect, right? I mean, 2024, you said you were looking for growth. We were looking for a partner in the insurance space, and it was
Absolutely.
just a match made in heaven,
That's it.
which then we
Yep.
created Freyt Insure, which you were obviously at our conference, you spoke on stage, and you met with a lot of our members, and we've got a few of our members already using the product. So I think
That's right.
let's just rewind back there, because I think you spoke
Mm,
about, Chris being the trucking fleets and the old ways and the amount of paper and everything.
that's
You'd
right.
speak with forwarders on a daily basis, pretty much, I would imagine, or at least a weekly
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah.
How many of those, if what the old process was, with the papers
Mm.
and that, to what you trying to achieve, you know, what are the added benefits to that and what we're trying to achieve? Obviously, with the old way, you've said previously that sometimes to get the policy can take 6 weeks, where I think
At times, yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we timed ourselves on our Freyt Insure portal, where it takes, if you've got all the information, it literally takes under a minute to achieve, which is
That's right.
remarkable. 6 weeks to
It
under a
is.
minute.
It is.
Like,
Yeah.
let's talk about the value adds and the benefits that the forwarders can get out of that.
Yeah. That's a good question. So certainly, I think, I mean, our freight forwarders, within the network will tell you that as and when they do want to, unless they already have an arrangement in place, with a broker, maybe something quasi like we're providing now. Generally, it starts off with an email or a phone call. A shipper may come to them and say, look, I really do need to cover these goods. They'll pick up the phone, they'll talk to a broker, maybe a couple of brokers. That broker will then ask some questions. A form maybe have to be filled in. You'll send over the bill of lading. They then might look at that and say, okay, I need to talk to the insurer about this. They'll pick up the phone, they'll email the insurer. The insurer will say, okay, can you ask a couple more questions? When's it going? What's the journey? Etc. So
Yeah.
it can take a long time and extremely expensive in terms of
Yeah,
time
well,
and people.
resources, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly,
absolutely,
exactly.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. So what we're trying to do here, we don't capture everything, but we've done a few things actually, which we didn't talk about last time. But obviously, it's all about simplicity. It's about being super accurate with the journey, but it's also about delivering the proposition in a way that allows the freight forwarder to hand that on as an additional service to their clients. Now, what they want to do with that, that's up to them, how they package their overall service. But it is no question that it adds another it's another value add in terms of the portfolio of services that they're providing. But one of the things that we did do with the journey is that not only are we simply putting it online and making it more efficient, we tackled the underwriters head on. And it's a very traditional industry, and you find that with underwriters in all sorts of topics, that they'll ask questions and they'll demand information from you that we actually know you don't need this.
Yes,
Why
yes.
you ask me, for example, I'll give you a classic one here. They always want to know traditionally, what vessel is this going to be? I said, well, what does it matter? You know,
Yeah.
it's a big one, it's a small one, it's going to be on a vessel because it's going by ship. So why do you need to know? Now they'll argue back, for example, that it comes into things like sanction checks and the United Nations and what have you, but there are actually only a few vessels out there in the world where you are not supposed to use these vessels because they are being sanctioned. But generally, they're all oil tankers, they're bulk carriers, not the kind of space that we'll be working with anyway. So it was some of those and that's something that we are bringing to the table, and we have to tackle each of the underwriters. And they always want us to ask extra questions, but at the end of the day, saying, why do you need this information? And then it's actually, we don't really need it. Okay, well, let's just take it off the list and see how you feel, and let's move forwards. So, and actually, they have enjoyed that process as well, because they've been able to challenge themselves and said, you know what, there's no point in keeping this information. Let's make this journey better. So we like what you're doing, so please keep going. But of course, the other thing for the insurers is not only is it good for the freight forwarders, but we're able to collect this data. And the insurers have never been able to do this before. It's
Yes.
paper, it's phone calls. How on earth can they be expected to collect this data? And the more we
Exactly.
have on the platform, the more feedback we can give back to the insurers. And then that means we have a better idea of what that risk profile is like. It also means in bulk, we as an entity can go back and say, look, guys, we're giving you 10,000 transactions a month here, right? We need a better
Yes.
price. And we want everybody to benefit from that. So the
Yeah.
insurer benefits from having the data. We benefit from the fact that we have consistency, and we have like a buying group power, if you like, which is what we can do
Yes.
through the freight world. And that all comes back to the benefits of the freight forwarder.
So I think so. Obviously, one of the issues we've had in the past is we talk about sanction countries and that, and I think to get I think any network, which there are many networks around there, which we know about, is
Right.
getting a product that is includes the buying power of the whole network. Now with Freyt Insure, with certain countries, how do we get around that? I mean, is it any port to any port? I mean, can we just touch on that? And if
That's
it
a
is,
really good question. Yeah.
if it is that,
Yep.
how many other networks in the world actually have this service offering?
That's right. That's right. And a lot of insurers, for example, they'll offer their clients. In the old world, you pick up the phone, you talk to the broker picks the phone, talks to the insurer. You might more often than not, you'll be talking about a port-to-port policy.
Yes.
So getting the goods to the port and getting them from the port to farm delivery often is not covered. So the policy that we have specifically for Freyt Insure, it is a door to door, any door to any door globally. But you only get that if you come in through the Freyt Insure environment. And that's, I
Yes.
think, really quite unique. And we know this, we've been talking to some of the freight forwarders, some of the larger players in your group, who may actually, we can talk about this later, but may be looking to basically integrate the platform into their own booking system at some point in the future. They, even despite the number of the amount of business they're running through, they still struggle with the same policy attributes, characteristics, as in it's port to port only. So we do feel we're bringing something really quite advantageous to the table here for the members, and obviously for their shippers at the end of the day who want that cover.
Yes, I think at the moment with Freyt Insure, it's they have to go through the Freyt World portal, log in there, and then through that we've got
Correct.
the Freyt Insure portal, which they post there.
That's
So I
right.
think something we've discussed, and we're completely open to it, because we've
Yep.
firm believers that the better the operations of our members, the better the members are, the stronger the network would be. The long-term plan would actually to embed this and perhaps even white label it, to have our members having their own products, which then they could use for their own customers. So do you think that this is going to be the trend moving forward? I mean, if you forecast the next 5 to 10 years where the how would you call it, the insurance technology space, where is that going to be in the next 5 to 10 years?
I certainly see a greater integration and a deeper integration of technologies. I mean, everybody in your network will know, obviously, the CargoWise platform. We already work with the CargoWise platform. We're already embedded into the CargoWise platform. And that embedding is really, really important. So the process that we were talking about, and we're saying it only takes a minute. Well, imagine if you don't have to do that at all, because you're putting all the data in to do your transaction booking for the client. And at that right point in the sale, in that process, because we can extract all the information that we need to provide a quote without you having to re-enter it, we can basically be embedded into that journey. We know what information we're looking for. The moment you fill in those fields for the journey and the commodity type and the value, we can present a price back in your freight transaction booking system to the user to say, by the way, would you like some insurance with that? And we call that tick box insurance.
Yes.
And it's no different to when you might be booking a flight on Thai Airlines, for example.
Exactly.
You're doing a trip to Hong Kong. You put all your details in, and right at the end, the officer, do you want insurance with that, Mr.
Yes.
Murray? Or why not? That's it.
Yes.
That's
And
exactly
yeah,
it.
exactly. So, I mean, I know from experience, if you're going to use the flights booking, for example, I booked flights the other day, you tick it off, you get your itinerary, and then the next email coming through is from the insurer with your policy already done.
That's it.
And
absolutely,
there's no reason why the forwarding industry, logistics space, can't be that simple, especially for the small to medium-sized forwarder.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, there's something else to think about here is that insurance penetration has always been, that's always the big challenge for every segment within the insurance space. How many people actually have insurance and what to have insurance for. But our statistics tell us, and the market generally accepts the fact that there are something like 50% of everything bobbing out on the ocean right now, all the goods in all the cargo containers going across the world, is either uninsured or underinsured at any moment in time. So just think about the billions of dollars, billions of dollars of cargo out there that should be covered. And it's only those people involved when you see these awful pictures, half the containers have fallen off the vessel when it comes in. The law of general average, it can be extremely expensive for a shipper involved in an event like that. And they're thinking, I only moved a mattress, but I'm actually being charged, an awful lot more because of the rules, of the maritime rules. So it's really important that the shippers understand that. And the freight forwarders now have an opportunity to offer that as a service. And I might go as far as saying, I have been speaking to one of our members, one of your larger members, and they have a policy whereby they insist on everything that they move being insured. So the shipper has to confirm, I've insured this item, and if not, we will get the insurance for you, because it always comes back on them at the end of the day. They have a freight liability policy, but the freight liability is only there to protect the freight forwarder. It's not there to protect the shipper.
Yes.
The shipper has a different journey, it's a different relationship. And of course, in your network is all about, we have a freight forwarder at the beginning of the journey, maybe one in the middle, and you have one at the end. That's what you're doing, right? You're connecting your freight forwarders.
Exactly.
So, but you need a product that is going to span that business relationship, that individual business relationship. You can't have insurance from A to B and then B to C and then C to D. It doesn't work.
No.
So that's the other thing we're bringing to the table, I think. And it's really important to think about that opportunity, and maybe even people thinking about changing the approach that they take to their clients to say, look, we really should be ensuring that this happens, that people are buying this insurance, because otherwise it's going to come back on us.
Yes, yeah, and it's just a massive headache after that. Now, I mean, I think you said earlier, with your trends and the stats, 50% of all cargo out in the ocean is uninsured or underinsured. Has that trend decreased or increased over the last few years, or has it sort of stayed at a steady rate?
I think that is a pretty consistent. I mean, these are almost, I would say, it's almost like figures pulled out of the air, because nobody really knows. Why? Because nobody's ever had the analytics to sort of check, well, what is going on. But I can imagine, I'm pretty sure that if we had the ability to run some analytics against all of our network members, and you said, well, everything is shipping.
Oh yeah, for sure.
How much that's insured? They'll go, well.
Oh yes, for sure.
Probably not as much.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, and I think, the part of this, the word tech and logitech, insurtech, it can be daunting for a lot of people, especially people that are sort of stuck in their old ways and papers, and they've got their processes. And a lot of people actually just simply do not have the time to transition to tech, because it's not just an overnight plug in, oh, it's working. There's a lot of training involved, etc. So for those members, for those people, not only members, we're talking to the wider community here, what should they be taking? I mean, what is the step to move into an insurtech way? Like, how, for a Freyt World member, how would you say, let's move into this insurance tech, let's improve the process. How do they go about it?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think one thing it's worth emphasizing is that it is quite daunting, and especially if you're on the end of a phone dealing with a broker on a topic you know nothing about. What
Yes.
does this policy cover me for? What does this policy cover? I don't know. So what we're doing through the Freyt Insure journey is we're bringing in a highly qualified broker team, and we're bringing in a high quality insurer with a policy built specifically for our members. Now that is all ready to go. So all that grunt, all that hard work, all that worry, hopefully, therefore, should dissipate.
Yes.
And what the members actually have to do is to think to themselves, do I want to offer this service to my clients? Because now I can do it without having to spend time and worry about, have I got the right policy for them? Am I doing the right thing?
Yes.
We're here to help them. It's almost like one of those sort of policies whereby you have a doctor on call. You know, you can sort of get the video and say, hey, I've got a problem here. Can you help me out? It's the
Yes.
same thing. We're here to help. So we have a great
Yes.
broking team. We have a great insurer, and they're extremely responsive. One of our members recently was moving only early in the days, but they rang us up and said, we need to move a supercar on Wednesday, and it's like Tuesday. I'm like, okay, right, what do we do? But we get on the line, the underwriter
Yes.
comes back immediately, gives us a rate. We then come back in, we do a special endorsement, special referral, and we get the documentation out to client. And I think a very happy client, I think a very happy
Yes.
shipper. And
So far.
yeah, it's just a very good demo, yeah, so far, but a very good demonstration that even when we step outside of the structure of the policy, that we can handle these special referrals and we can handle these sort of special project needs. So yeah, to answer the question, so it's a case of everything has been set up. We've also got everybody, we have a booking, we have a log-on system all sort of set up through the network.
Yes.
It's just a case of, I think the main thing is I think the main thing is we have a conversation. So we can have a conversation directly with each of the CEOs to explain this is how the program will work. We can spend, most of the training sessions have been like half hour and no more. It's so intuitive that most of you says, thank you very much, Sam. That's great. We can go ahead from here. And I'm almost like scared to let go of the reins, the truth. But so far, no problems. It's been great,
Yeah.
actually. And it's so nice to wake up in the morning and you can see the business that has happened over the previous 24
Yes.
hours. No telephone calls, no worries from the client. Just thank you very
Yes.
much. Another happy client, another happy client. So it's definitely working. Yep.
It's just running smoothly. And I think, and I hope I can say this, but I think what was quite nice, because the product was so new, you yourself, I know, we're working very hard behind the scenes in terms of developing
Yep.
the customer journey, the
That's right.
UX, the UI of the product.
Yep.
And in many ways, we were actually used as a bit of guinea pigs. And I hope our first initial Freyt World members don't mind, but they were a bit of guinea pigs. But I mean, thankfully,
That's right.
everything went off so
Yep.
smoothly, and it's
That's
been
right. Yep.
a huge success. And and what made it even easier is obviously Freyt Insure at the booth at the conference. You got to meet with most of these guys before our products was actually working and functioning. And we had a great time at the conference. And I think a lot of our members see you as part of the family. You are part of the Freyt community, which is what we're trying to achieve as Freyt. And they trust you now. And I think that's just made it so much easier to push our products along to them.
That's important, I think, yeah. And like I say, we're now at the point whereby I think we're sort of ready now to sort of open things up a little bit more, to get in touch with
Yes.
more of the members. I know you'll be pushing some material out to remind people what the processes
Yes.
are, but yeah, it's we're ready. We basically make an introduction, we get on the phone with the CEO, with the team, we explain. They explain to us also, it's also important that we understand their business needs. It's not just
Of course.
cookie cutter. We do sit down, we do listen to what they're doing, we understand the kind of traffic they're working on. And maybe, for example, they're working with specific commodities that there's a couple of times we've already done this, actually. We've actually changed the classification for a couple of commodities types, according to HS codes, such that we could allow them to basically onboard the business without having to make a referral, for example, with the underwriter.
Yes.
We've done that at least a couple of times. So, but once we have that conversation, we set things up, we actually set them up as an organization, and then that organization tells us how many users they want. So we individually identify those users. They get their own secure ID. They log on, they change their passwords, simple stuff like, all this sort of stuff. And then
Yes.
and then they're away. They're into the booking. We sit down, we handhold them for the first couple of bookings to get the hand of it,
Which
and
is
then they don't
fair.
want to see us actually. Say that, Sam, it's all right.
Yes.
We're on. What about the manual? No, we don't need the manual. It's good.
The next time they'll see you is cheersing you at the next conference over a nice ice
Hopefully,
cold
yeah.
beer.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, yes.
Yeah, so I think you're speaking about the data that you're able to get, and obviously the onboarding
Yep.
and that, and key account managers are so active with our members, trying to understand their business, and we've got all this data on our back end to who we can connect with. But our whole issue is we need more data in order to grow our network and connect people. And we do look at networking a whole lot different to what other networks do, because we do dive into this data. So having Freyt Insure allows us to have this data and allows us to understand who we can connect with who. So at the same time, not only does this help with the members and the business that they obviously the convenience of it, but it also helps the network developing business within the network, and obviously we can now measure who's doing business with who. So we are all incredibly excited for what has to come. I think next week we've got a workshop with the staff, with you, Sam, which we're going to run through a few more things. And we're going to be pushing this internally with all our members. And I think the next step after this is probably have a podcast in the next few weeks or next month or so, where we actually have one of our members or two of our members that are actually using Freyt Insure, and we can start actually diving into the success stories that they are, the feedback that they've experienced so far. So, but overall, I think it's been very, very positive in what the 5-6 months we've been working together, and there's definitely growth for the future.
No question, and it's a joy actually to work with the team. I have to say, with your team, and also like working with your clients. So they're good fun. It's good fun. It's a very interesting industry to be in.
Yeah,
and to it's nice to actually have a solution. Something that it really adds value to their business.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's what they want, right? So I think, there's so many networks out there, as I've mentioned like 4 times in this podcast, but like, how do you differentiate yourself? How do you bring real value? And, through Freyt Media, through Freyt Insure, this is how we're going to differentiate ourselves. So I couldn't be happier with the way things are going. And I know people are going to catch on to this, and other networks will implement it, and that's only natural, but it's up to us to sort of stay ahead and always make sure we're ahead of the pack. So
and maybe just one thing to mention actually, Murray, to members as well, is that we've just been talking about single shipment cargo.
Yes.
It's just the first product, right? There's so much more that we can do in terms of developing that product set. So we're already talking with an insurer about warehousing. So it's sort of longer term warehousing. So they're happy to do it if they're at both ends of the journey. They're actually happy to. So we have a lot of.
Let's dive into that a bit. Like let's talk about what the next year has in store for us, and what are sort of the objectives for the next year, and what we would like to achieve.
Well, I mean, maybe let's focus on one or two aspects at the moment. One is definitely I'd like to start bringing out more of the products that we've already successfully launched in the States. So one of which, for example, we talked about warehouse a second ago. Another one is Gap. So whereby we may have a client who already has a standard policy, which is a good thing that they can offer to their shippers, but more often than not, either owing to the nature of the commodity being moved or the value of the commodity, they need to fit that gap. So we can offer them a gap policy that basically says this one is not a normal 100,000, this one may be 300,000 of value. Don't worry, we've got a policy for you there. That's certainly something else I'd like to do. We actually, I mean, interestingly enough, we recently launched a relocation product, actually online, because we're developing a direct-to-consumer offering at the same time. But that journey has been really interesting, because if there are freight forwarders, for example, who focus in on the relocation space, we could actually basically provide a bespoke onboarding journey that a freight forwarder could use directly with their clients as and when they're doing that onboarding of the client. The client is deciding on which relocation company to move. At that point, they could then effectively use this application, if you like, to develop new revenue streams in relation to that booking. So we're actually talking to several relocation companies right now about this. And again, if we have members in the Freyt World arena, why not? Let's have that conversation. So there's a lot going on there on products. And then on the data side, well, not data, but it's sort of management of the risk is probably more. It is important for the freight forwarder, but it's also important for the insurer. So what we're able to do is we have a system called Alarm, and we're able, for example, to help an insurer to spot where there may be a potential risk coming up. So I'll give you an example. This is for clients, for example, who may actually be, on some of our clients, we do actually register the vessel. So for example, when you do register the vessel, as we know how much risk an insurer may be carrying either on a particular route or even on a particular vessel, or for example, on a particular airline, a particular flight on a particular day. So it gives us the opportunity to give a heads up to the underwriter, say, look, by the way, you've got $10 million of risk on this particular flight. Do you want to keep taking that risk? Or do you want to back off and maybe suggest, close that down, say, no more on this flight, let's put it on to the next one. So there's that kind of thing. But also, if we're having a bad experience, it's very important. So most insurers, they'll pay the claims and they come in dribs and drabs through the brokers, and they don't really keep a picture on who's generating these claims. But often, more often than not, it can be, sometimes it's a couple of freight forwarders who can create this. And it allows us to sort of jump on it quickly and act quickly, because we can see the data, we can see the trend data, rather than waiting for the end of the year. And if that was to happen, then we all may be impacted with a rate increase across the board. Whereas we can identify these trends. It could be, for example, thefts happening on certain routes. We've done this work with some of the big US carriers when they're moving phones from A to B. And there's always a couple of coffee shops where the driver sort of stops, has a cigarette, and all of a sudden he sets off again, and there's 10,000 phones have gone missing. So that's the kind of thing. So we have this capability, and obviously the more that people use the platform, the more data we have, and the more protection we can therefore give to us and also to the insurer. So it's just a better vision, a better view, a holistic view as to what's going on. So that's the other thing that we're introducing.
And I think to a large extent, the more people use it, the more feedback you get on the platform, right? So you're just going to refine that customer journey to make it as easy as possible for the members, for the logistics, the forwarders, and I think that's so important. But listen, Sam, I think we could chat about this all day. I think we've hit our limits for this podcast. So thank you very much for joining us. And we've obviously got big plans this year. There's obviously, we're going to be pushing a lot more Freyt Insure content out to our members, which will be educational, informative. We will have you on our podcast at least twice a quarter, hopefully, if time is okay with you. But then you will definitely be at our next event in Vietnam, the 20th to 23rd of October. And hopefully, because I know you've got a German connection, that we will see in Munich at our booth, which most of our members will be at. We will have a very good time. So, Sam, thank you very much for your time. And we look forward to working with you very closely in the coming year.
Look forward to it, and thank you for the time.
Perfect. Thanks, Sam.